Hey everyone, Geophysicist Stefan Burns here. The Philippines can't catch a break. There has been some intense geologic activity over the past few days, and it doesn't look like it's coming to an end. In fact, we may be building up to something really big in the Philippines, specifically a large volcanic eruption. Now, as many of you know, there was an eruption at Mayon Volcano just a couple days ago on May 2nd, and this was quite significant. There was extensive ashfall all across the province of Albay. We had pyroclastic flows. Hundreds of people were evacuated from the slopes of the volcano. There have been damage now to livestock and pets and animals and crops, and well, this is a big deal. Mayon Volcano is still at an alert level of 3, and this activity started up on January 6th of this year, 2026. There has been increasing sulfur dioxide emissions, there's been earthquake activity, there's been these sort of pyroclastic flows and eruptions. In fact, we just had a new eruption just in the past 12 hours from the main summit of Mayon Volcano. Some small pyroclastic flows coming down. Here we see this imagery. This was the first one, and here we see the second one, very similar from the same outpouring, but over about 2 hours or so, probably still going on right now. Honestly, Mayon Volcano has been active basically continuously since January 6th. A lot of people are worried that this could turn into a very serious situation, similar to Mount Pinatubo in 1991. The parallels are uncanny. Well, today, we had a magnitude 6 earthquake strike Eastern Samar at a depth of 73 kilometers. So you had this volcano erupt, ashfall all across this region, and then 48 hours later, the ground starts to shake under the feet of the people that live there. And there is a connection between earthquake activity and volcanic activity. The two are related systems. And when you get these strong seismic waves to hit these volcanic systems, it can perturb them and potentially destabilize them and cause big eruptions. We saw 2 big magnitude 7.0 plus earthquakes 1 year before Mount Pinatubo. That was in 1990. They occurred on both sides of the volcano. And then basically a year later, boom shakalaka, big VEI-6 eruption. That's greater than 10 cubic kilometers of dry rock equivalent material. A ton of ash blown up into the atmosphere. Sulfur dioxide was responsible for cooling global temperatures in the aftermath of that. And well, we're just seeing right now similar parallels playing out. So that is what we're going to cover in today's video. I'll give you the latest update on Mayon Volcano, and we'll also examine the past historic earthquake and also volcanic activity for the Philippines, talk about these interconnected systems a little bit, and also describe in general the energetic environment that we are in right now here on Earth, because that also influences regional areas that are showing heightened activity at that moment in time. Now, if you don't know, Mayon Volcano is a large stratovolcano. There are mainly 2 types of volcanoes. You have shield volcanoes, stratovolcanoes. Shield volcanoes have a low viscosity magma and lava, so it just basically flows outwards. You don't really have the potential for these big explosive reactions like you do from a stratovolcano. We see it here very clearly with this image taken on February 28th of this year, 2026, in the middle of this eruptive activity that we've been seeing in 2026. And clearly it's a big volcano. And what happened with this pyroclastic flow is you had a little bit of the side blow out and go outwards that way, because you have the main caldera at the top, and you do have a lot of, you could say, plumbing going directly to the top. And what we're seeing just recently, for example, that is where we're having this lava outflow. But you also have these vents to the side, and you can get a surge of magma to push through that and kind of blow it out. So looks like that's what occurred on the 2nd of May, just a few days ago, with that big eruption. And the more you destabilize the slopes and just reduce the overall strength of this volcano, the more likely it is that you could get a really big eruption. Think Mount St. Helens, Mount Pinatubo. So this is quite serious. Here we see some of the ashfall from this. So really not good stuff, basically. I mean, it's not like this has never happened before, but no one wants this to happen. Tons of respiratory problems as a result of this, livestock issues. I mean, pets and animals dying because they couldn't be evacuated. So this is a very serious situation. And we also see that our alert level for Mayon is at a level 3 right now. So it goes from 0 to 5. 5 is like, it's happening right now. So level 3 effectively tells you at any moment in time, something can happen. And there has been pyroclastic flows, volcanic earthquakes, lava effusion. We're having inflation and deflation and a lot of ground deformation in general at Mayon Volcano right now. Sulfur dioxide flux is hanging around like 2 to 3 tons a day, sometimes peaking higher, sometimes a little lower, but in general, active gas emissions right now. Rockfall hazards, ballistic fragments. I mean, it's really quite crazy. So this is very serious. And well, today we have this magnitude 6 follow-up to the south. That wasn't exactly near Mayon Volcano, but it is fairly close by. And a magnitude 6 isn't that big, but it is a significant earthquake. Once you get to magnitude 6 and greater, it starts to become notable. And of course, the Philippines has a long history of these sort of earthquakes. We can see that right here. This is all earthquakes magnitude 6 and greater going back to 2020, January 1st. We see a huge clustering of earthquakes to the south. It's a very obvious pattern that pops up here. Huge clustering of earthquakes to the south, some earthquakes to the north, and then not that many right in the middle where you have Mayon Volcano. Okay? Now, if we go here and we switch this to largest magnitude first, you see recently we had in 2025 on the 10th of October, a magnitude 7.4. You may recall that one occurring to the south right here. We also see the 7.6 occurring in that location. 7.1 further off to the side, ultra deep right there. Here's a 7.1, same location. Now, if you go to this earthquake, the 5th strongest during this time frame, it's to the north. So that is up there. And then beyond that, we have one more magnitude 7. That one also to the south right there. So you notice that there is this gap in earthquakes right in this location, this magnitude 6 starting to fill it in. It's not a magnitude 7 though. These others here, here's a 6.6. That's quite strong. Here's a 6.1, 6.9. So getting close. That was on the 30th of September 2025. So just about a little less than 2 weeks before that magnitude 7.4 that struck. And here is a 6.2. Now, if we go to our other map, we see all the magnitude 7 plus earthquakes going back to 1950. And we see that there are quite a lot. Obviously, we even have a magnitude 8 here, 1972. So we see that the strongest earthquakes do occur in this region. This is a subduction zone. You have the oceanic plate underneath the, it's kind of a mixed continental oceanic plate, all these islands, fractured up. You have a raised up area here, but you see a magnitude 7.9 there in 1976. If you look at these earthquakes in this region that we're concerned about for Mayon Volcano, you see 7.1, that's in 82, 88, 96, 95, 95, 75. So you see a whole bunch back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Nothing since then. So it has been quite some time. And if we go here, you'll see some big earthquakes. So in 1990, we had a magnitude 7.7 right there. So the magnitude 7.7 occurred north of Pinatubo. This was specifically July of 1990. And 1 month before that, to the south, there was a magnitude 7.1 earthquake, and that is in June. So just a month before, you notice that you have now this 7.1 and this 7.7 on both sides of Mount Pinatubo, a very big, powerful volcano. And then less than a year later, it woke up with activity in April and is actually exactly a year later in June when it entered into its most explosive phase of activity. Mount Pinatubo erupting in 1991, being the second strongest volcanic eruption of the 20th century. So definitely a big volcanic eruption, a VEI 6 eruption, meaning it ejected 10 cubic kilometers to 100 cubic kilometers of dry rock equivalent material. Dry rock means that it's compressed down. So if you have this ash, it's a lot more cubic kilometers of ash, but if you compress it down, it's like 10 to 100 cubic kilometer for a VEI6 eruption. So very, very big. Are we going to see something like that from Mayon Volcano in the near future? That is the big question. We see here with our Morova data that it recently has become active in January and basically has stayed active up till this moment in time at moderate to high levels. So this is looking increasingly concerning as we go forward. Now there is a history of Mayon waking up and then cooling off and waking up and cooling off, and that is also probably the most likely outcome, to be honest, which is a good thing. But we can't discount the possibility that we do start to see this ramp up even more, and the eruption in the pyroclastic flows on the 2nd of May are concerning and are, warrant a closer investigation of this, and in general a little bit more caution as it relates to a bigger eruption there. But as it relates to the earthquake activity, we have this magnitude 6, and we could get stronger earthquakes to pop off. I would say if we do get some stronger earthquakes to pop off here in the near future, then we should be even more concerned about big activity hitting Mayon Volcano. I mean, we did have that 7.4 recently, but that's a little bit further to the south, but still important to keep in the calculus of everything. But the two big magnitude 7+ earthquakes striking on both sides of Pinatubo a year before it had its huge eruption shows that connection between earthquake activity and volcanic activity. And there are outside forces which influence the overall geophysics and geologic progression here on our planet. So we're looking at the sun here with this imagery. This is extreme ultraviolet light imagery. We're looking specifically at our 211 angstrom view with a 193 filter on it. We see this coronal hole here. Now, if you watch the channel, you probably know what these are. These are areas in the outermost atmosphere of the sun, known as the corona, that are deficient in plasma, the fourth state of matter, which is highly vibrational. It's charged, it's electromagnetic. It's important when we see these coronal holes to pay attention because they are well linked to earthquake activity, specifically when these coronal holes are on the equator like this one is, and they're large. Now, this one's not that large, but it is perfectly along the equator, so we'll be hit by that high-speed stream for probably a day or two coming up in 2 to 3 days. But we see big earthquakes cluster around the times when we have big coronal holes within this Earth center to geo-effective position. So this location on the sun is when we really get these big earthquakes to strike. So we do have this coming up, and in general, I'm mentioning this because we've had a lot of earthquake activity and a lot of coronal hole activity at the same time over the past couple years. These coronal holes really started to show up back at the end of 2024, all through 2025, now through 2026, and we've seen big earthquake activity. We had a megaquake last year, magnitude 8.8, biggest since 2011, the 6th strongest earthquake on record. So this is very, very significant. And there's other connections too, which is quite interesting. If we look here at our X-ray flux, this shows us solar flare activity. And we see this solar flare that occurred today, just recently, and this was a 1.8, 1.9 M-class flare. So that is the 2nd strongest category of solar flare. You have M-class flares, X-class flares are higher. So this is significant. A 1.9 X-class flare. You'll notice that activity before this was quite weak. We didn't have any that broke into the M-class zone until you go back to the end of April. Well, if we look at our earthquake activity for this time frame, we see here for the past 7 days, our largest earthquake is this magnitude 6 for the Philippines. Now look at the timestamp. Here it's 6:09 a.m. Universal Time. And if we go back to our X-ray flux activity here, you see that this occurred right around 1:30 or so. So you have 4.5 hours after the strongest solar flare, going back 6 to 7 days, you have that earthquake pop off. So solar flares and earthquakes being linked precisely isn't the strongest correlation. It's more so the coronal holes. But I do find it interesting that we get this strongest earthquake of the past week just a few hours after we have the strongest solar flare of the past week, at least going back to the 29th of April. And just something else to pay attention to if you're interested in the connection between our near-Earth energetic environment and geophysical and geologic events here on Earth is to examine the solar wind and therefore also geomagnetic storm activity here on Earth, when Earth's magnetic field is vibrating and shaking. So we see that our solar wind has become perturbed. Right now we are in a configuration that is perfect for generating a minor geomagnetic storm. And when you have Earth's magnetic field vibrating, oscillating across the planet, and there's these big swings in field strength, well, the magnetic field is able to cut through all the different parts of the Earth. The crust, down into the mantle, goes out through the atmosphere, it connects to the plastosphere, deep into space. That's one of the main energetic connecting factors that we have here on Earth. It is the magnetic field. So we often see these strong events occur when there is heightened geomagnetic activity or slightly afterwards. And this is just an example. This isn't going to be a big storm, it looks like. Right now, we're not even at G1 levels, but if you hold this for another 4 hours, we will be. But this is another factor to track if you're interested in following this out all the way. And Pinatubo, 1991, well, let's look at the overall solar activity back then, because we are in a similar position right now, if you did not know, to 1991. So we can go back here. And we move our sunspot cycle progression chart. Here we have solar cycle 22, and 1991 is going to be right in here, and specifically the biggest activity for Pinatubo, like the really big ones, were in June. So you see that that occurred during solar maximum. Sunspot numbers were very, very high. The sunspot numbers right now are not as high for solar cycle 25. But we did have a stronger solar cycle than solar cycle 24. So we're still in elevated activity. We're not in solar minimum or like the very end of the descending phase or very beginning of the ascending phase. We're still right in this main zone of solar activity as measured by sunspots. So this occurred during a solar maximum. If we were to have something big happen this year, let's say from Mayon Volcano, it would occur during the beginning of the descending phase for solar cycle 25. But there are a lot of similarities here. And the big thing with this solar cycle is that we've had huge coronal holes on the sun that last for 10, 12, 15 rotations, every rotation taking about 1 month to get around, continuously buffeting the Earth with structured solar wind, where you have this high density wall first hit the Earth, and then you have high speed, low density solar wind buffet the Earth afterwards, compressing the magnetic field and more, triggering geomagnetic activity, altering the ionosphere, the electrical properties of the global electric circuit, and more. And all that is connected to our Earth, the actual surface and ground of the Earth, the lithosphere, and deeper. So we hope that activity at Mayon Volcano does start to wind down and overall things settle out and go quiet, but there's no guarantee that happens. And just in general, one thing that I would watch is if we do start to get some big high magnitude earthquake activity right in this location. Keep in mind, Mayon Volcano is like right there, okay? If we start to get big magnitude 7 activity in this zone, then we should be mindful, like really mindful of there potentially being almost perhaps a Mount Pinatubo style eruption. It's possible. There's no reason why we couldn't have that happen from Mayon Volcano. It happened at Pinatubo. It's happened many times in Earth's geologic history. It's going to happen in the future. That might be the next location. It's showing all the signs of activity that you'd expect before something big occurs. But you see these big magnitude 7+ earthquakes that struck nearby all did so like 50 plus years ago, 50, 40 years ago. So this part of this subduction trench is overdue. There's been a lot of slip and movement to the south, to the north. Here, the energy has been building, the strain is high, it's all stuck up, and if we do start to see some ruptures, some slips, some movement, those shock waves hitting the volcanic systems here could be quite serious. I mean, you see a whole chain of volcanoes going down. So this area is looking very, very active right now, and definitely a zone to watch. I will keep you up to date on everything that's happening here and across the globe. So if you like to stay up to date, then please subscribe. I've been your host, Stefan Burns. Please smash that thumbs up button to help this channel grow, to reach more people with this video. It's good to stay up to date on what's happening with the Earth. This is real news, real updates. That's what I do here. I release videos almost daily on this channel and also on my Clips channel. Subscribe to both. Thank you all. Have a great day. Say your prayers for everyone in the Philippines. They get hit relentlessly with earthquakes, cyclones, volcanoes. Say your prayers for the world. God knows we need it. Thank you. See you soon.